Good evening, and welcome to Tsukiji Hongwanji Buddhist Temple. Everybody, please join me in Gassho.
皆様、本日は築地アカデミーをご受講いただき、誠にありがとうございます。講座開始時間となりましたので、ご講師をご案内いたします。
Thank you so much for coming to the Saturday English service. First, we would like to begin the service by reciting the
開講に
aspiration
先立ちましてお念仏いたします。ご本尊の阿弥陀様へ向かいまして合唱。
Aspiration. Reverently, we come before the shrine of Amida Buddha, the Holy One, the Perfect One. With gratitude, we have brought our offering of love and devotion to honor the Buddha. We earnestly resolve to strive to understand the holy teaching and to walk every day in the blessed path, so that, like the Buddha, may we attain the peace of nirvana.
Now we'll chant the sutra Jusei-ge. Please turn to page 3 in the same book.
「皆様、本日は築地アカデミーをご受講いただき、誠にありがとうございます。講座開始
め き天候音不言一種解放像おさえくどくほ上陽内海説法ししく供養一切部具足種徳法信条満徳意三害用妙仏無下知津達未不詳感覚営利都市最小尊志願若国大仙の感動奥書店人高内妙受ナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブ願にしくどく平等聖祭道本菩提師お上安楽ナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダブツナマンダ
We will now sing the Gatha Shinshu anthem, which can be found on page 5 in the same book. Congregation, please stand up. remain standing for the recitation of the three treasures found on page 4 in the same book.
The three treasures. Difficult is it to receive a human form? No, we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the Dharma of the Buddha? No, we hear it. If we do not cross over to the truth in the present life, in what life shall we cross over? Let us, with sincerity and true reverence, take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we, together with all sentient beings, awaken to the great way of enlightenment and to the unsurpassed intent of Amida Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we, together with all sentient beings, enter the storehouse of the Dharma, becoming like the wisdom ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we, together with all sentient beings, become units in true accord, in harmony with all things. The peerless, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rare to encounter, even in many hundreds and thousands of kalpas. Now we are privileged to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Please be seated. I'd like to welcome all of you who have attended the International Buddhist Association English Dharma talk for the month of September. We are still in the midst of COVID, and so therefore we cannot carry on our regular service as we have planned. But we do have online services, and for those of you joining us online, welcome to our Saturday service for this month of September. As many of you know, the Nissho Hongwanji, the Hongwanji of Kyoto, we have international divisions. And of the older ones, we have Hawaii, and we also have North America, which is separated into the Buddhist Churches of America and the Buddhist Churches of Canada. And we also have Brazil and also Latin America, as well as Europe, and many countries in Europe. And today we have a Dharma talk, which will be presented by Bishop Marvin HARADA. And Bishop HARADA, many of you might not be able to understand the differences in the ranks of Shinshu. A bishop is the highest, he is the leader of the organization, and he is also the administrative top. And so therefore, Bishop HARADA, Marvin HARADA, is now the most senior position in the Buddhist Churches of America, which covers all of the United States. Hawaii and Canada are different organizations. Hawaii being, it was there before America annexed it as the 50th state, so therefore Hawaii is a different organization. But the Buddhist Churches of America, BCA as we call it, Marvin HARADA is the head of BCA. And because of the time difference, he has sent us a Dharma talk, his Dharma talk, and we will be presenting it to you this evening as if he is here speaking to you. from that point, he will be speaking on the topic of practical and truth level Buddhism. And this is, his talk is based on general Buddhism as well as in how it applies to Shinshu Buddhism. So, without further ado, we will be presenting it on screen. And those of you joining us on the web, just the Dharma talk from Harada Sensei will be presented to you. So if you will quietly watch the Dharma talk for this evening.
Hello, everyone. I'm Reverend Marvin HARADA, Bishop of the Buddhist Churches of America. It is my honor and privilege to share a message in English for all of you at the Tsukiji Hongwanji. I would like to share my screen and go into my topic at this time. Today, I'd like to talk about practical and truth level Buddhism. So to me, we can look at Buddhism from two levels, a very practical level and a truth level. All of our great Buddhist masters and teachers are expressing Buddhism at the truth level, the deepest, most profound level of the Buddha Dharma. But the average person is more interested in Buddhism at a practical level. The average person asks questions like, well, will Buddhism help me live a happier life? Will it help to ease my stress and anxiety? Will it help me to live a more meaningful life? Some might even ask, will it lower my blood pressure? Will it help me to be more successful in my business? Will it give me good karma? So there can be this big gap between the truth level of Buddhism and those who are on a sort of a practical level of Buddhism. And this is especially true for the newcomer to Buddhism who comes to our temple. They have those very practical level questions in mind. And if the minister is speaking at this truth level, then you could see that there's a disconnect. Something is not being communicated. But we have contemporary Buddhist teachers who, to me, are addressing that gap between the truth level and practical level. Books by the Dalai Lama, by a newscaster by the name of Dan Harris, and Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist master, are some examples. The Dalai Lama wrote this book, The Art of Happiness. The Art of Happiness. This is an excerpt from his book. I believe that the very purpose of our life is to seek happiness. That is clear. Whether one believes in religion or not, whether one believes in this religion or that religion, we are all seeking something better in life. So I think the very motion of our life is towards happiness. So it's very clear the Dalai Lama is reaching this broad general public. Everyone wants to live a happy life, but we don't know how to find it or how to live that happy life. And so the Dalai Lama addresses this in his book. It sold 2 million copies. 2 million copies, The Art of Happiness. So the sequel to that book was The Art of Happiness at Work. Now, how can I be happier in my work? This is a wonderful book. And many people are trying to find more fulfillment in their work. Is this all I do every day? work from 9 to 5, and after 30, 40 years, my life is over and my work career is over. So people are looking for a sense of fulfillment in work. That book also sold 2 million copies. This is a book, a very popular book. It was a New York Times bestseller, 10% Happier by Dan Harris. Dan Harris is a TV news anchor. He was on ABC. He had the show Nightline and Good Morning America. So a very successful news broadcaster. And in this book, he writes, "How I tamed the voice in my head, reduced stress without losing my edge, and found self-help that actually works. A true story." So what happened was Dan Harris had a panic attack on the air as he's doing a news broadcast. He had this panic attack. He couldn't even think of the lines to say in his newscast. So he realized that his use of drugs, his drinking, his work pressure was causing, great stress in his life. So he thought, what should I do? What should I do? And so he tried meditation because he'd heard that maybe meditation helps. And it was hard at first, but then he got more into meditation and he went to retreats. And it really helped to ease his stress and anxiety. But then that led him to Buddhism because he wanted to know, well, what's the philosophy? What are the teachings that meditation is based on? So he was led to this truth level from his initial practical level of interest in meditation and Buddhism. So I think some will stop at the practical level, but many will seek further to find the truth level of what they are experiencing in meditation, let's say. The Vietnamese Buddhist master, Thich Nhat Hanh, prolific writer. If you go to a popular bookstore here in the United States, like Barnes and Noble, and you go to the section in which there's books on Buddhism, it's mostly the Dalai Lama's books and Thich Nhat Hanh's books. You might be lucky if you find one book on Shin Buddhism, but Vietnamese Buddhist master Thich Nhat Hanh, the late Vietnamese Buddhist master Thich Nhat Hanh, wrote so many books. And look at his titles, so practically oriented. No Mud, No Lotus, The Art of Transforming Suffering. Anger, Wisdom for Cooling the Flames. How to Love, Mindfulness Essentials. Being Peace. Fear, Silence, The Power of Quiet in a World Full of Noise. Living Buddha, Living Christ. Isn't that a striking title? Here in this country that's over 90% Judeo-Christian, to see a title like this looks maybe very interesting. See, he's trying to reach beyond just the Buddhists. No Death, No Fear, Comforting Wisdom for Life. One of my favorite books written by Thich Nhat Hanh. So very practically oriented. Shin Buddhism, or Jodo Shinshu, I think we're a little behind in presenting the practical level of Shin Buddhism. But there is a practical level of Shin Buddhism. But first, I think we should address what Shin Buddhism will not get you. So Shin Buddhism will not get you $1 million, but it can help you to feel like $1 million. So being a Shin Buddhist, saying the Nembutsu at a Las Vegas casino is not going to help you win a jackpot, or it's not going to help you win the lottery, but it can make you feel like $1 million. I served for 34 years as a minister at the Orange County Buddhist Church, OCBC, Orange County Buddhist Church. One of our most devout members there is a woman by the name of Berta Hamada. One day in class, I threw out this question, and I presented it to Berta, very devout Nembutsu follower. And I said, Berta, if you had your choice between $1 million but no Nembutsu, or the Nembutsu but no $1 million, what would you choose? $1 million or Namu Amida Butsu? Her response was like this: oh, sensei, that's easy. That's easy. I would choose Namu Amida Butsu. See, now, if I ask myself that question, I have to honestly say, I have to pause and think about it for a little bit. $1 million? Just think what I could do with $1 million. Maybe I could buy a Tesla. Maybe I could pay off my house mortgage. So I have to kind of think about it. But Berta Hamada, no hesitation. No hesitation at all. I would choose Namu Amida Butsu. Much more precious, much more valuable than $1 million. So she has gone from the practical level to the truth level. Nembutsu, to her, is this deep and profound truth. Buddhism won't cure your cancer, but it can give you the spiritual strength to face, to even embrace your cancer. And that is where the practical level of Buddhism and the truth level of Buddhism begin to merge, begin to connect. Now let me turn to truth level Buddhism. One of our former members, the late Carrie Nakagawa, wonderful lady. Her children all grew up at OCBC. She was a Dharma school teacher. She was very active on our scholarship committee. Wonderful, wonderful lady. She came down with pancreatic cancer. It's one of the worst cancers to get. And although she got treatment, there wasn't much the doctor could do for her. But when I spoke with the family after her passing, they said that their mother, even after being diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, her demeanor never changed. Her demeanor never changed. Doctor says, oh, I'm so sorry, you have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Oh, is that right? Oh, thank you, doctor. Thank you very much. Goes home with the same sort of mood as if it's a normal day. Who can be like that? Only someone who has really received the Buddha Dharma deep within their heart and mind, to me, is able to live like that. Poems by Ayako Suzuki, the wife of a Jodo Shinshu minister. She died of cancer some years ago, and there was a book in Japanese titled Gankokuchi no Atode, After the Diagnosis of Cancer. I received this book from a ministerial friend. It's a wonderful book, and I just translated a few of her poems. And let me show some of her poems that, to me, shows how through the Nembutsu, she received the spiritual strength to live through this terrible illness of cancer and to face her own death. This is one of her poems. If one awakens to death, one feels much stronger about life. Exact opposites melt into one, and there is an incomprehensible peacefulness. See, exact opposites, life and death, melt into one, and there is an incomprehensible peacefulness. Another poem. Now, as I sit here, talking and laughing with my husband and children, I realize that we have done so for maybe thousands of times. But when I reflect that there might not be tomorrow, I feel like embracing them all. how many times have we had dinner with our families, same family, maybe the same dinner, maybe okazu or something, just an ordinary dinner, and we think nothing of it. But Ayako Suzuki, she never knows. Maybe this is her last dinner with her family. So when she thinks, maybe this is my last dinner with my family, I feel like embracing them all. Another one of her poems, I will become Namu Amida Butsu for my children. I will become Namu Amida Butsu for my friends and temple members. When you think of me, please say Namu Amida Butsu, and I will call the Nembutsu in return. The first time I read this poem, I didn't quite understand it. I thought, well, how do you become a word when you die? But I realized that for Ayako Suzuki, Namu Amida Butsu is not just a word. It's not just a recitation. It's a deep and profound truth. That's why when she dies, she will become Namu Amida Butsu. This is a poem that I'd like to share, written by one of our OCBC members, the late Scott Morris. He died of ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. Now, Scott was not raised a Buddhist. He's a Caucasian, but his wife was a Buddhist, and she wanted to bring her family to be raised as Buddhists. And so they started attending OCBC a number of years ago. Well, Scott came down with ALS in the early stages. And ALS is such a sad illness because there's absolutely no cure for ALS. If you get cancer, there's some hope. There's radiation or chemotherapy or surgery. But if you get ALS, there's absolutely no cure. The most you can hope for is that you get a slow developing ALS. Some people might live 10, 15 years, or maybe even 20 years with ALS, and then others only live a couple of years. So after Scott came down with ALS, we decided to create a Living Through Illness support group to help members in our Sangha that had some kind of serious illness, or a member of their family had an illness. And we would gather once a month, and we would let them talk about what they're going through. And then I would try to interject a little bit about Buddhism to try to help them deal with their illness. And Scott and his wife both attended regularly. So on one of those sessions, Scott was kind of sad because he was saying that he would probably be missing out of so much in life. He probably wouldn't live long enough to attend his son's high school graduation. He had 2 young children at that time. He probably wouldn't live long enough to attend his daughter's wedding, to walk her down the aisle someday. And he was kind of sad, saying, gee, I'm going to miss out on so many things of life. And so I thought, gee, what can I say to Scott to help him? So I thought of this idea. I encouraged Scott to write letters to his children for them to read at those milestones in their lives. At that point, he still had dexterity in his hands and fingers. Lou Gehrig's disease starts from your feet, and it works its way up your body. So first, you can't walk well. His first symptoms were he stumbled over his own feet, and then it affects your hands, and then it affects your speech, and then it takes your life when it affects your breathing. But your mind remains alert all the way through. That's what's so sad about Lou Gehrig's disease. So Scott was still at the point where he could type. So I encouraged him to maybe compose some letters to his children, a letter to his son that his wife could give him at his high school graduation, or a letter to his daughter that his wife could give her on the day of her wedding, and then he could be there with them in that sense. So a month later, A month later, we had another gathering. And right away, Scott said, "Oh, Sensei, I wrote something." So I thought that he had written some of those letters and he was going to share them. But instead, he read this poem. He had composed this poem. And this is the poem that Scott composed. "I have ALS, and I am grateful. I am grateful to retire early to be with my family. I am grateful I have family and friends that are so supportive and hopeful. I am grateful I can still walk and get around. When that is gone, I am grateful I can still use my hands to feed myself. When that is gone, I am grateful I can still breathe and laugh and feel. When that is gone, I am grateful I had a wonderful life. And when that is gone, Namu Amida Butsu." Scott Morris, even in this relatively short amount of time that he attended Orange County Buddhist Church, maybe a couple years or so, he came to receive the Nembutsu as a deep and profound truth at the truth level. At the truth level. He never asked Namu Amida Butsu to save him from Lou Gehrig's disease, but at the very end of his life, even when his physical life is gone, Namu Amida Butsu. Like Ayako Suzuki, he came to receive it and encounter it as a deep and profound truth at the truth level. So Scott came to experience and appreciate Namu Amida Butsu at this truth level, not the practical level. It's not just a recitation or a word. It is something timeless, something deeply true. So initially, we might be interested in Buddhism at the practical level, but if we continue on the path, we will encounter it at the truth level. So Shinran Shonin, in the Tanisho, he expresses this truth level understanding of the Nembutsu. This is the familiar passage from the Tanisho that goes, "But with a foolish being, full of blind passions, in this fleeting world, this burning house, all matters without exception are empty and false, totally without truth and sincerity. The Nembutsu alone is true and real. The Nembutsu alone is true and real." So Shinran Shonin uses this metaphor, this fleeting world, this burning house. It's like the metaphor that appears in the Lotus Sutra, the parable of the burning house, which represents our samsaric world. And the Buddha is trying to use various expediencies to get us to get out of this burning house. So this burning house is our world of samsara, our secular world that is brief, fleeting, and false in comparison to the world of truth, to the Buddha Dharma. So, these are very challenging words from Shinran Shonin to us. So he's saying everything in our life that we treasure and value, our work, our assets like our money, our relationships, our spouses, our children, our parents, everything is false in comparison to the Nembutsu. And the Nembutsu alone is true and real. So this passage from Shinran Shonin, this is a favorite passage of Professor Takamaru Shigaragi, who was my teacher at Ryukoku University. And he would often quote this passage from the Tanisho in his lectures about Jodo Shinshu. So Sensei taught us that, we have to select and choose truth over secular things that are false and fleeting. We have to select and discard the false and select and choose the true. Meaning we choose to follow the path of the Buddha Dharma. We choose the path of listening to the Nembutsu, of studying the Dharma, listening to the Dharma, receiving the Dharma. So it doesn't mean that we have to leave our spouses or our homes or our jobs. No, Sensei wasn't trying to say that. It just means that we have to know that all the secular things in life are temporary. They're not lastingly true. So in that sense, they are false in comparison to the truth of the Nembutsu. So he used to say this in his lectures: to meet with truth means to meet with what is false in life. So in Japanese, he would say, uso ni ao. Uso ni ao means to meet truth in life. So when we realize the temporariness, the sort of falseness of the secular world, now the Dharma, now Namu Amida Butsu becomes much brighter. We see the profoundness, we see the truth level of the Nembutsu. Saichi, the Myokonin. Myokonin are most deep and faithful followers of Shin Buddhism. Saichi's poems reflect this truth level that I've been trying to share. So let's look at a few of Saichi's poems. Saichi writes, I, bound for death, am now made into the immortal Namu Amida Butsu. Isn't this poem interesting? He doesn't say, I, Saichi, become immortal. Like in Christianity, you die and go to heaven and you become immortal there. That's how they believe in Christianity. And maybe even some people think that going to the Pure Land is to become immortal. But look at what Saichi writes. I, bound for death, am now made into the immortal Namu Amida Butsu. What is immortal, what is timeless, is the truth of Namu Amida Butsu. I, Saichi, as a physical human being, my life will come to an end. But I, Saichi, have touched this timeless truth of Namu Amida Butsu. That's what is immortal. That's what I become. Just like Ayako Suzuki's poems. When I die, I will become Namu Amida Butsu for my family and temple members. Another one, very similar. Death has been snatched away from me, and in its place, the Namu Amida Butsu. See? So for Saichi, death is no longer something to be feared. Death is no longer something to think as something negative. Death has been snatched away from me. Saichi has received this timeless truth of Namu Amida Butsu. My joy is that while in this world of Shaba, I have been given the Pure Land, Namu Amida Butsu. My joy is that while in this world of Shaba, the secular world, the world of samsara, I have been given the Pure Land, the truth of the Pure Land, Namu Amida Butsu. This Shaba turned into the Pure Land, and myself changing, Namu Amida Butsu. Beautiful poems to me that shows the depth of spirituality of Shin Buddhism through the Nembutsu. So to me, the challenge for future propagation efforts is how to bring out this practical side of Shin Buddhism. To bring it out, but without having it become sort of like light Buddhism, like light beer. We don't want Shin Buddhism to just be sort of shallow and to always just be at this practical level. It, of course, it has this deep and profound side of it. But we need to bring out the practical side to help lead others to the truth level. And so practical level Shin Buddhism must always lead to truth level Shin Buddhism. And to me, if we can't communicate this practical level of Shin Buddhism, how can we interest those who are seeking the Dharma and connect with them? They will just pass us by and go on to other Buddhist traditions that address this practical level better than we do. A book I'd like to recommend in English is Reverend Gyome Kubose's Everyday Suchness. To me, that book bridges this practical level and truth level of Buddhism and merges them. So to read his book, it's very practically oriented. We can connect with Buddhism and our everyday life, but there's a depth and profoundness in his writings as well. So our challenge then, as we strive to share our Shin Buddhist teachings with the world, not just in Tokyo, not just in the United States, but with the world, is to bring out the practical level of Shin Buddhism that leads to the truth level of Shin Buddhism. I'd like to thank all of you for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts. I very much working in this vein of trying to show the practical side, the practical level of Shin Buddhist teachings, and to be on this path with fellow Nembutsu followers to reach and arrive at the profound truth level of Shin Buddhism, the world of Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much for listening to my message today. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.
That was Bishop Harada Sensei. And for those of you maybe not too familiar with practical or truth level, with the terms of that, but on a very everyday common level, that would be a practical level of Buddhism, as Harada Sensei was saying. People are more concerned with their lives, their daily lives, and how things are going. And so therefore, you want some process, you want to be led, or you want a path, somebody to lead them. But from many religions and teachings, as you know, in fact, there may be too many. But what one can do is to follow the thoughts, to follow the ways, the path that people around you have taken. And for like Harada Sensei was saying, Scott, he had a wife who went to Orange County Buddhist Church. And he himself then got involved, and he felt the peace, and he felt the truth. And for the others also, they started out on a practical level and then slowly saw the deepness of the truth level. But unfortunately, many say, okay, that's not the path that I'm looking for. You know, I want somebody to say, your illness will be fixed, or you have a cure, we have a cure. That's something that you're expecting, but in most cases, it's impossible to attain. As you know, the Gautama Siddhartha, the Buddha, essentially started by processing birth, aging, sickness, and death. And these are qualities that are part of our lives, but we cannot do away with. So we may want to age slowly and watch our children grow, but we don't want to get sick. And at the far side, we don't want to die. But unfortunately, as long as we have been born, we have to die. So any thought that says you won't die is practically impossible to attain. But because you're seeking somebody to tell you that, okay, you won't die if you follow our path, you're not going in the right direction. In the sense that you're chasing after something that's impossible to attain. So if somebody led you back to the birth, aging, sickness, and death, to accept that as part of your life, to not to avoid, you will be much, much at peace. And so this is the practical level. So once that people come to talk to you, or people around you are able to see how you live, you have affected their lives. And I have seen this many times. You don't have to preach. You don't have to go out and tell them something. It's the way that you're living your life. That in itself helps others to slowly accept part of their practical levels and then slowly gain the truth level. So I'd like to field questions if you have concerning today's Dharma talk, or in general, if you have any questions. Nothing too serious, please. But do you have any questions or something that I may be able to answer? 大丈夫ですか? はい。This was the first time that we've had a video Dharma talk here. And because of the physical difference that this is the first time that we tried it, and then I'm not sure if it's the same as having Sensei here to speak to us. Especially because when I was speaking to the camera and nobody here, there's no feedback. And it's very difficult to talk like that. But with Corona, we've had to do that. But with the many people here who have attended, I can see that you were able to grasp. This is what we need to do. So you could just turn off the internet and then be gone and do whatever you like. But then when you come to think about it, this was the message. Our everyday life, our living itself, this is living in the Nembutsu. So,
how is Tsukiji approaching Jodo Shinshu Buddhism in a practical way? Jodo Shinshu at Tsukiji Hongwanji, is this the approach that they're taking as well? Practical Buddhism at Tsukiji Hongwanji, yeah.
Tsukiji Hongwanji recently has been very progressive. They've been reaching out to real common people, to people outside. And then more and more people have attended or have come to see Tsukiji Hongwanji. And because of that, I think it nurtured understanding that Jodo Shinshu is it's Jodo Shinshu, it's Shin Buddhism. And it's not just for a common it's not a common everyday practical level, but it's deeper. When you sit, looking at Tsukiji Hongwanji from the outside, you will not see the Hondo. But if you come in the Hondo and you sit down, the quietness, the peacefulness, if you're able to see that, you get a completely different view. And so I think by reaching out, Tsukiji Hongwanji has been quite recently being able to reach more and more people who would not have come into the Hondo. And also there are the webcasts. And webcasts became a necessity because of COVID. It's kind of a good offspring, but unfortunately for many of our local temples, it's much better to see people in person, because when you speak to them, you have all kinds of questions that you would ask then, but not over the web or not over the telephone. So I think this is kind of a process for now to have online. One good thing that I heard is we've got the archives, and you can go back and watch the archives. True, but it's much better in life. And you can feel the delivery. You can feel the sensei speaking to you, to each one of you. And like your question is, I think it's come down quite a bit. Mm-hmm.
I just think it's a great opportunity to get more followers, is to make it practical. And also the timing that religion is now in the news with the, sorry, this is maybe controversial, but the unification. There's been a lot of, constructive feedback. So it's just a great opportunity, I think, for Jodo Shinshu in Japan to have more followers. Yeah.
Many of you may remember the AUM, AUM. That was a very big impact, negative impact on religion per se. And we are still trying to overcome that. But unfortunately, AUM never was a Buddhism oriented. They just kind of said we're Buddhists, but it wasn't. It never started that way. And now, as you say, there's religious unrest all over the world. And for the followers, that's the only way they have. So we can't take that away from them. But I think responsible organizations should take care of the followers. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, too many people are getting left out in the cold right now. So, any other questions or comments that we may have? Like I was saying, we do have our international arms of Jodo Shinshu, and we have been reaching out, and we do have, like Kanisho, that has been translated in many, many languages. And in fact, there were many, many years ago, there was a person that actually came across on the Orient Express, came into Japan to meet Shinran Shonin, only to find out that he has passed away many hundreds of years ago. And so there is an impact that people can reach through the readings of materials that Shinran Shonin has left us. よろしいでしょうか? Okay, so I will now return the mic to.
Okay. Thank you very much, Harada Sensei, all the way from the United States. And thank you also very much, Yamamoto Sensei, for the great talking and explanation. Thank you so much. Now, we will now sing the gatha, Namo Amida Butsu, which can be found on page 6 in the blue service book. Congregation, please stand up. Please be seated. Let us recite together the Senshi Creed found on page 2 in the same book. Followed will be recitation of the benediction.
The Shinshu Creed. We single-heartedly take refuge upon Tathagata Amitabha for the enlightenment in the life to come, abstaining from all sundry practices and teachings and giving up the trust in our powerless self. We believe that the assurance of our rebirth comes at the very moment we are led to entrust upon the Buddha, and we call the name Namo Amida Butsu in happiness and thankfulness for the Buddha's great compassion. We also acknowledge gratefully the benign benevolence of our founder and the succeeding masters who have led us to believe in this profound teaching, and we do now endeavor to follow throughout our lives the way laid down for us. Amida Buddha surrounds all men and all forms of life with infinite life and light. Particularly does the Buddha send forth loving thoughts to those in suffering and sorrow, to all those in doubt and ignorance, to all who are striving to attain truth, and to those whose feet are standing close to the great change men call death. Amida Buddha sends forth oceans of wisdom and compassion. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandavs, 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 namandavs. Namandav, namandav.
We would like to thank all of you for attending and watching through the YouTube today's Tsukiji Hongwanji's English Dharma service. For those attending here in person, please take time to scan the QR code located near the entrance. For those watching online, please click on the link provided in the description field. We would appreciate if you could fill up the survey provided in the link and give us your feedbacks or views so that we can provide on our services. And the next service will be held on October 29th at 5:30 p.m. in the same room. The guest speaker will be Reverend Osamu Nanjo, resident minister of Kyogakuji Temple in Shizuoka. You might know him as a staff member of this service. And the topic will be being grasped and never to be abandoned. We look forward to seeing you again. Everybody, please put our hands together and join in Gassho. Once again, thank you so much for coming to today's service. Please feel free to come forward to offer incense. Once again, thank you so much. どうもありがとうございました。